Yeah, this is great. Thanks for everyone that is joining. This is the first of a few that we will be doing. I'm very grateful here, looking for information on how your fellow Canadians are reacting to the tariffs. Uh, my name is John Poinareka. As many of you might know me, I am a financial educator, and I have been doing this work for the past couple of years, and I'm building a community that is interested in being informed, getting the right information to make good financial decisions for themselves and their families. If you are in the chat, I think there's a couple people in here. Let me know where you're dialing in from. We are also live on YouTube, just so you know. We're multi-platform, and this is quite exciting because I've wanted to do this LinkedIn version for what feels like quite a while. Perfect. Now, now that you're here, first of all, let me know you can hear me. And we'll get started. So the thing that we want to address today is how are Canadians going around reacting to the tariffs? And I want to know how you personally are reacting to the tariffs. As many of you know, not too long ago, President Trump affected tariffs on Canada, and we are going to look through to see what those tariffs were and how people are going about them in real life. Okay. All right. So we have two new pieces of information. One is from the Bank of Canada, and one is from CTV News. One is a survey that was actually done by CTV News, and the other is one that was done by Bank of Canada. Both of them will be very essential in just understanding where exactly we are in the process of either getting somewhere with a negotiation or actually finding ways to cope with these tariffs. Okay. So I'm going to make myself smaller and make the articles bigger. Perfect. So the one that we will start with is what the government of Canada just did. Now let me know if you can see it. And somehow it is upside down, so bear with me for a second. I will go back and fix the visuals so that we have a really good view of what's going on. All right, so it seems to me that we are not getting good collaboration from what is the article. Let me just see if I can try it again. But in either case, if this doesn't work, we'll just get started and you will have to take my word for it. Transform. All right, this seems to be working, so bear with me as I get it correct. All right, and that a joy. Wow. Boom, this works. Touchdown. Now this is perfect. This is perfect. Okay. So how are Canadians and Canadian businesses responding to what President Trump has made for tariffs? Now let's look at the facts of the case. So I'm going to go through two pieces of research, one from Government of Canada and one from Global News. This is going to inform us on how our neighbors are feeling about the tariffs and what we are actually, or in general, thinking. We've got a couple people in here. That's all we need. As long as there's one person getting informed, I am happy about this. All right. All right, so this is how Canadians are responding to the tariffs. Okay, the conflict with the U.S. was initiated by the U.S. administration. The new administration that came in November started an economic and trade war that has unfortunately engulfed a big part of the Canadian population. It has made the economic climate feel so uncertain, so much so that most people are walking around with a lot of financial stress, and this is not this is not ideal, but we are dealing with this. So as far as government of Canada is concerned, they were able to do some research between January 29th and February 28th, so the month of February, to see how Canadian businesses and Canadians in general are reacting to it. Now you have to understand, most of the tariffs actually came after February 28th. There were two different rollouts, and the retaliatory tariffs came after February 28th. So this is how Canadians are reacting. This is how Canadians are reacting to it. All right. So as the economic climate has become more unpredictable, the scope of the tariffs also very unpredictable. The survey right now that we're going to look at reflects a survey of about 1,000 people. And what we see, the first thing we see is household spending. Household spending has been reduced because the trade tensions have led to households worrying about how their job security and their financial health is going to be affected. So what they do now is they tend to save less. What you're seeing on your screen right now is a picture of how households are managing to plan for the future. So because of the concerns about job security, especially from people with highly dependent industries, we are seeing a reduction in spending and an increase in precautionary savings. 27% more are saying they are going to save more precautionary, and we are seeing that 54% maybe won't change anything, but 27% is a significant number that they're increasing savings. Now, where you see a significant change is those preparing to make major purchases are actually less by 25%. And this is understandable, because if you are not sure about whether your job is going to be there, Canadians are taking precautionary measures to make sure that they are not buying the fridge, buying that stove, or getting into any new high margin or high ticket items. Now, what are the main sectors that are being affected? The main sectors that are being affected are actually oil and gas, manufacturing, agriculture, and forestry. These are the industries that are most affected. I do believe that all the industries in Canada are affected. These ones are just more affected. So what we are seeing is that, especially from people working in these industries, we, as a Canadian population, are making the tough decisions to not buy the big ticket item and to do precautionary savings and spend less. Now, the other part we have seen is from the difference in business sales, outlook, investments, and hiring. So businesses have revised down their estimates on what they expect to perform, and indicators of future sales such as order books and sales inquiries have also declined. This decline is particularly prominent in manufacturing and the sectors that depend on discretionary household spending. So there's an elbows up movement that is going on right now in Canada. It's a self-empowerment message that we are Canadians, we are Canadian tough. And some businesses have reported that because of that buy Canadian sentiment, they're actually seeing an uptick of some sales that are mitigating a part of the negative impact. But it has not reduced the uncertainty that we're seeing from the market, and it has not covered enough of the business that has been displaced to make it a net positive. The other reason why businesses are investing less is because credit has become a little bit more difficult to access with the unpredictable markets that we are experiencing across the country. Because the US is our biggest trading partner, banks are getting very tight with credit because they are unsure of how the business is going to look because of the tariffs, or what the tariffs are going to look like in their final form. Second, the cost of imported capital goods such as equipment and machinery has risen. So the necessary capex that needs to be done costs more, and hence it reduces how much we are actually investing. So that's why you can see businesses are having a bit of a challenge getting to their investment goals, because they have to put survival as the front and center of what they're doing. To read from the report, most businesses say they are continuing with existing investment projects, particularly projects aimed at maintaining capacity and improving productivity. In the oil and gas sector, many businesses expect a modest impact in their near-term investment and production decisions. But a tariff, if the tariffs stay on, we are still in the if territory, will make the projects less attractive to investors in the medium term. So, the heightened trade uncertainty has led businesses to reduce their hiring and investment plans. Now, these are the share of responses from the business leaders. 40% say they want to employ less because of the tariffs, and 48% say they will decrease their capital spending as part of the investment in their business. That affects whether they are buying new machinery, which slows down the economy further. Now let's talk about pricing. We understand as prices increase because of what the market is doing, business owners might take it upon themselves to pass on the prices. So what Government of Canada did in this consultation is understood what exactly are the intentions of business owners. Now, the Canadian dollar has depreciated since October 24th, as some of you may have seen, and increased tariffs have been across the globe. So even some of the pass-through supply chain ends up gathering costs, which gives businesses the quandary of, are you going to raise prices or are you going to keep prices the same? Now, 50% say they're going to keep prices the same. About 9%, 3% say they will increase 0 to 9%. About 8% say they're going to keep, they're going to increase 10 to 59 to 49%. 11% say they're going to increase prices between 50 and 89%. However, the number to look at is about 27% of the firms are going to increase prices between 90 and 100%. These are the increased tariff cost. 27% of the firms say they will pass through 90 to 100% of the tariff cost, which means in the industries that are affected, the prices are expected to go higher and inflation is expected to rise, which also affects the cost of living. So many retailers expect that they'll be able to rapidly pass on the cost increases linked to tariffs if they were transparent with consumers about the reasons for the increase. But the scale and timing of price increases may be held back by competition, weak demand, and the scope and size of tariffs, which are still in flux. Now, these trade tensions are actually pushing up inflation expectations. Both households and businesses expect tensions to lead to higher prices. And as we have seen, some of the prices are going to be because of tariff effects being passed through. Some of the price increases are just going to be part of the cost of productions being higher, because what we order to manufacture what we make is also higher. So right now we can see that 7% expect prices to be the same or to decrease. 47% expect prices to increase. Now, on the impact of cost of living, 72% expect the cost of living to increase. I harken back to when we had the COVID inflation, how cost of living shot up and times were very challenging for families. This is a consensus that 7 out of 10 Canadians expect the cost of living to go back up. And short-term inflation forecast, as you can see, have also gone up significantly. So this is exactly what the government of Canada found. Let me know if you found something new and unexpected from what you already knew. It's a bit of common sense that we understand that yes, inflation is going to go up because the prices are going up, but you can see 72% of people agree that this is going to impact the cost of living, and 27% of firms that were surveyed expect to pass on 90 to 100% of the tariff impact to their customers. And it's not only that, 49% of businesses expect to spend less on capital expenditures, and 40% expect to spend less on employment. The industries that are affected the most are manufacturing, oil and gas, agriculture and forestry. And you can see Canadians are already anticipating this increase in prices by making decisions to have precautionary savings, which is 27% of Canadians, and delay a major purchase. 25% of Canadians say they're delaying a major purchase because of the trade tensions. What are you doing for your family and your own budget? While we solve that, we are going to go into the next article, and this is something that was done by CTV News. I'll let you catch your breath while I catch mine. And thank you so much for joining. I hope this information allows you to understand how everybody is making decisions, especially in the affected industries, which are oil and gas, manufacturing, and agriculture and forestry. We are all affected. As you can see, 72% of Canadians are expecting the cost of living to increase because of the tariffs, according to the government of Canada. So this is a very, very serious occurrence. And I remember going through the COVID inflation. A lot of people are expecting inflation, and the businesses have decided to make a pause on hiring. 40% of the businesses are making a pause on hiring, and 48% are making a pause on CapEx spending. Right, so now we'll go through this research that CTV News did. A strong majority of Canadians feel that the US President Donald Trump's tariffs against Canada will have a negative impact on their finances. Specifically, more than 3/4, 76%, feel that Canadians think Trump's actions against Canada will somewhat or negatively affect their finances for sure. So let's look at which regions feel that the most. The survey was conducted between April 8th and April 10th, and 1,200 Canadians were the ones surveyed. And this was done by phone and through an online survey. So this kind of breaks it down to which parties people support and how they felt it. So this is going to be very interesting to see who amongst us thinks that this is good, this is not good, and who is most afraid. NDP voters most strongly felt that their personal finances will negatively or somewhat negatively be impacted, 85%, and 80% of Liberals felt the same way. However, Conservatives feel much less angst about the trade tensions because you can see that their impact on the tariffs, they don't think just as NDP and Liberal voters do, with only 67% thinking that that's going to have a negative impact, while Bloc Québécois is just below the Liberals at 76. So this is self-identified information. This is the question that was asked: do you think the U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs against Canada, tariff actions against Canada, will have a positive, somewhat negative, and negative or no impact to your finances? 53% say negative, 23% say somewhat negative. So combined, negative and somewhat negative, 76% of Canadians say it's going to be a negative on my finances. There are 6% of people who are unsure, which is, expected, and the 11% who think it's not going to have an impact. However, there is a good 8% that say it's going to be a positive outcome on their finances. If you're one of those 8%, I would like to hear your rationale in the chat. So please get in the chat and let me know, if you're one of the 8%, why you think President Trump's tariffs are going to be great for your finances. So this research was done by Nick Nanos, Chief Data Scientist at Nanos Research. They say the most concerning demographic, the demographic with the most concern, is actually seniors. People who are of an advanced age are appearing to be more concerned than the younger people. While the majority of Canadians across all regions and age groups say Trump tariff actions against Canada will have a negative or somewhat negative impact on their finances, respondents aged 55 and over are most likely to say tariffs will have an outright negative impact to their finances, 56%, which is greater than the 53% national average by 6%. When it comes to the government helping, let's do that again. When it comes to the government helping workers who are impacted by the tariffs, nearly 2/3 of respondents, 65%, support the idea. That's more than double the numbers, 25% who oppose it. So 25% oppose government helping people who are impacted. And as we're going through an election right now, obviously the candidates are speaking to this, and you can see they're making different promises. The Liberals have promised $2 billion in a fund to bolster the auto sector, as well as a shorter waiting periods for employment insurance and tax deferrals for affected companies in the oil and gas, agriculture and forestry, as well as manufacturing. The Conservatives have pledged a $3 billion, so $1 billion more, to loan money to businesses hit by tariffs in order to keep workers employed. Meanwhile, NDP has said that it will give all the money collected from counter tariffs to workers and communities hit the hardest by the US trade war and introduce an emergency price cap on food items. I'm not a big fan of price capping. Price capping ends up working negatively, at least what we have seen in the past. I would like to go in depth if people are interested. So NDP suggesting that is something that I would not be able to get behind, but that is what they're promising to Canadians. Now, on the question whether Canadians are actually lock in step with creating a pipeline, most Canadians are actually in agreement that, we might need a pipeline. But where the disagreement comes in is carbon pricing for big emitters. So capitalizing on Canada's resources by getting essential minerals and energy to other markets has been another theme on the campaign trail in light of the recent tariffs. The survey found that nearly 3/4 of Canadians, 73%, support or somewhat support the idea of building an east-west pipeline and liquefied for oil and liquefied natural gas with facilities on both coasts so we can serve the eastern market and the western market. Now, 11% oppose and 8% somewhat oppose. So about 18% oppose or somewhat oppose, with 10% unsure. But the vast majority want to build this pipeline ASAP. However, there are strong regional differences. The prairies, 88% are supportive or somewhat supportive of the idea than Quebec, where Quebec residents only 49% support the idea, while residents in Ontario are 77%, BC 76%, Atlantic provinces 83%. And that brings me to wonder, why does Quebec and residents of Quebec not want the pipeline? Because as we look at numbers, this is an outlier outcome to have only 49% of Quebec residents support an east-west pipeline. Seniors, 75% support. Conservative voters, 88% support. While voters in the age between 18 and 34, 65% only supported 65%, and Bloc Québécois voters again 32%. So the Québécois question is really interesting to me, because when I look at these numbers, that's a number, if you have to map it to expected outcomes, that's a really outlier number as an opposition to what is expected to be a national project that is revenue generating. While the survey found strong support in east-west pipelines, voters were split on the idea of removing the carbon price on large industrial emitters and greenhouse gases. I know that this was a hot button issue when Mark Carney started his run for Prime Minister. Just before kicking off the campaign, Liberals axed the consumer-facing carbon tax, but the industrial carbon tax remains the same. So only the part the consumer sees has been cut. The other one is just intact. About 49% of respondents say they were opposed or somewhat opposed to the idea of removing the carbon price for large greenhouse gas emitters. That's compared to 39% who say they were supported or somewhat supported the idea, and 12% who say they weren't sure. So 49% of respondents say they oppose or somewhat oppose the idea of removing the tax, compared to 39% who say they supported the idea or somewhat supported the idea. So it's almost split down the middle. Once again, the idea found more support in the prairies with 46%, and the least in Quebec with 30%. NDP voters, 75%, were most likely to oppose or somewhat likely to oppose removing the carbon tax for large emitters, while conservatives at 27% were likely to oppose it. Liberal voters, 64% somewhat opposed the idea, which means about 36% were not in opposition or were supportive of the idea. So this shows me two things. It shows me that there's really something happening with the Bloc and Quebec as far as the pipeline is concerned. Whether it's the understanding of what it should be, or the understanding of where it will be built, something is rubbing the Bloc Quebecois voters and Quebec residents the wrong way about this specific pipeline. However, when it comes to tariff actions negatively affecting Canadians, we are nearly universally in agreement that it's going to have a negative impact, except of course for 8% of us who happen to think that it's going to have a positive effect. Now, let me know what you have learned. I want to do more of these sessions as I can. This has been fun, and if you're still in the chat, let me know your questions. I'm gonna stay on for another 5 minutes, and then it's going to be a wrap. All right, so no questions. Thank you so much for joining. And if you're catching this session later on, thank you as well. Make sure you follow me, and we'll do a bunch of these. If you have any questions on your own personal finance and you're determined to do a little bit better, also reach out to me. I help people with that as well. So thank you so much.